my talk. Here we go. How he said he living life as a gringo. Where you question where you fit in every time you mingle. They say you do this with not enough that. My rapping is really bad. This life as a gringo.
Yes, hello and welcome to another episode of Life as a Gringo. I am Dramos, of course, and it is Thursday, so it means it's time for our Thursday Trends episode. I'm flying solo on today's show because I know we did a bit of the Just Be Social Club, one of our masterminds that we had. So I had a guest on there, Brenda, my business partner, talking. So I wanted to kind of just get on here solo and have a conversation with y'all. And speaking of Just Be Social Club, we are putting up the one-on-one sessions, the new group that we're going to be inviting in. We're going to be doing that this week. I know I was promising it last week. We just kind of ran into some tech issues, to be completely honest. So right now it's in like beta. Well, not like an official beta with a coder, but like betas, and we're just going to put it out there and you email us if the link doesn't work for you. But it should be up by the time of this recording. justbe.nyc is the website. You'll see the social club tab. You just click that and it'll take you through the forum so you can book your free one-on-one, and we'll talk about kind of what the process is for this Just Be Social Club and how you can be a part of it and see if it's a good fit for you where you're at. So justbe.nyc. I know some of y'all have been hitting me up on Instagram and things like that saying that you want to be a part of the new Just Be Social Club when we launch it. So that offer is going to be available now at the time of this airing. So it'll be up there. You can go check that out. With that said, man, today on the show, we're going to be talking about mental health a bit. We're going to talk about how Gen Z seems to be struggling more with mental health than the millennial generation. We're also going to be touching on, a lawsuit in Colorado as well as Minnesota that potentially questions whether or not Trump is disqualified from running for office because of January 6th. So we'll talk a bit about that. And in Mexico, there was a presentation made to the Mexican Congress from a UFO expert presenting what he claimed were alleged alien corpses. So that's been going on the internet. I've been seeing a bunch of memes. So we'll talk a bit about that. And then on my gente segment, man, the VMAs pretty much went Latin this last week, which you love to see. A lot of representation, some great awards, won great performances. So we will touch on that for on mi gente segment. But first and foremost, as we always do, let's just kind of dive into the nonsense, into the BS in a segment we call For the People in the Back.
Say it louder for the people in the back. Say it louder for the people in the back.
All right, so let's start with this question of mental health amongst Gen Z. And I'm pretty sure Mental Health Awareness Month is actually coming up in October, I believe. So I think it's a perfect time to start kind of discussing this, actually, no, I'm way off. Mental Health Awareness Month is in May. So, hey, we're getting ahead of it right now. And the other thing I'm going to Google right now, Gen Z, when are you considered Gen Z? So anybody born between 1997 and 2012 is considered Gen Z. So currently they are between the ages of 9 and 24 years old. Nearly 68 million people in the U.S. fall under this umbrella. So there was apparently a study here, a new polling that shows a shift in Gen Z, right? This younger generation, ages 9 to 24, struggling a bit more with mental health, right? Now they say a smaller share of Gen Z is thriving compared to millennials at the same age. And members of Gen Z are far less likely to describe their mental health as, quote, excellent, according to a new study. Less than half, 47% of Gen Z Americans are thriving in their lives, among the lowest across all generations in the U.S. today, and a much lower rate than millennials at the same age, a report from Gallup and the Walton Family Foundation has said. Now, researchers also said they found evidence that Gen Z self-reported mental health struggles are distinct from those of previous generations at the same age. Asked to describe their current mental health or well-being, only 15% of the members of Gen Z aged 18 to 26 said it was excellent. So I want to just this was according to, this is the problem, by the way, with like these Gen things, right? Where it's like, oh, Gen Z, are Are you or are you millennial? Now, according to this thing, Gen Z is people born between 1995 to 2012. Okay, so I mean, not far off. There's a couple of different, and millennials are born 1980 to 1994. You would fall under the millennial umbrella. Okay, so I mean, I always have the issue, that distinction of, am I a millennial? I'm obviously, I'm very much not Gen Z. I'm a millennial. I am a youngish millennial, I guess you could say. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. So they're basically saying, in comparison to people of my generation, millennials, they are doing far worse when it comes to their mental health, right? Now, they're saying that's a steep drop compared to a decade ago. The study found when 52% of millennials in the same age range said their mental health was excellent. And in 2004, 55% of people aged 18 to 26, including both millennials and Gen X respondents, reported excellent mental health, right? Now, they go on to say, why was there such a significant decrease? Researchers noticed that overall declines in mental health over the past decade may be partially responsible. According to the study, both millennials and members of Gen X report far lower mental health ratings today than they did a decade ago. Now, other findings kind of in this poll, because it's not just about your mental health per se, they say about 53% of Gen Z students who want to pursue higher education believe that they're actually going to be able to afford it. So just more than half believe they can afford higher education. 40% of Gen Z students said they're worried a lot about some gun violence at their school. And others said making enough money to live comfortably is Gen Z's most frequently cited hope for the future, with 69% of those surveyed ranking it amongst their top wishes. Now, this is interesting when we talk about mental health in general. And I think there's probably, they mentioned it in this article, and I'll link in the show notes, so I didn't include everything in it, but, that I think Gen Z, this generation, is far more open to discussing their mental health, so that could be a part of why the numbers reflect the way they do, right? I know my generation is just more recently becoming comfortable having these discussions, but it wasn't something in my 20s that I was willing to talk about. I didn't admit to people close to me that I was seeing a therapist. That was something I did in secret. Family members didn't even know that stuff, right? And I think that probably could skew the numbers in a particular direction. But I think also, what's interesting is, like, I think my generation was the last generation that, like, went outside to play and didn't have social media when we were younger. And we kind of, as much as we are involved in social media today, I think we do have sort of the balance, the best of both worlds, where we know what it was like pre-social media. And while we're all guilty, I think, of taking it too far, maybe my generation doesn't rely on it just as much as Gen Z, who literally were pretty much born in the age of the internet, and then things like MySpace and Instagram and Facebook and all the other things we have today, right? And I just think as a whole, as like a culture, as a world, we're just becoming very disconnected, I think, right? And I think technology is incredible, and I love technology, and it's the reason why I get to do so many of the amazing things that I am passionate about. I mean, podcasting is basically like the new version of radio, and it's crazy that you don't have to have a radio station, right, to broadcast your thoughts and ideas to the entire world. I literally, if I wanted to, could be recording this in my bedroom as I used to, and it still is getting broadcast out to potentially to hundreds of thousands of people, right? And there's something beautiful about that. But I also think it also, I don't know, I think it gives us this false sense of connection, right? It gives us a very superficial sense of connection in the digital era, where when we're not getting out there, we're not interacting with people, we're not valuing real relationships and real life experiences, that don't have to necessarily be shared. Or I think we've talked about this when it comes to validation and like posting our vacation pictures on social media in real time, right? Because we want people to be jealous and to see all the things we're doing, and that makes us feel like it was a good vacation. I think these are like incredibly unhealthy mindsets, and then we're constantly like, we might be in a bad mood, which is a normal human thing, or we might be feeling weird about where we are in life, and then you go on fucking Instagram and you're seeing somebody half your age, making twice as much money as you allegedly, or their life just looks perfect and amazing, and you're wondering why you're just so unhappy where you are right now, and it just sort of adds to the weight of the heaviness of your life and your unhappiness, right? And I think all of that, I'm sure, contributes to why this generation, Gen Z, is having a bit of a harder time when it comes to their mental health than previous generations, you know. And I just think it's something interesting to kind of point out, right? I think I try to pride myself on being somebody who um, can potentially help the next generation or can help my generation sort of break some of the curses that we've inherited so that we don't pass them on to the next generation, right? And I think it's important to sort of be mindful of like what are the next generation concerned about? What are they dealing with at the end of the day, right? And I think we don't realize how much of an effect the digital era is having on this younger generation. And I can only imagine if I grew up where everything I did was being documented on social media and there were follower numbers, right? Where it was like, it was bad enough when you were in school and you were like, you know, were keenly aware of who was popular just because of like, it seemed like they had a lot of friends. But I'm sure if it's like on Instagram and you can quantify, oh, Sally has 10,000 friends, I have 200, I'm a loser, right? Like I'm sure things like that have an effect. And then God knows whatever else is being shared or talked about throughout the course of your school year on social media about your fellow classmates, right? So I don't know. I just think it's an interesting kind of conversation, as I always try to sort of have when we zoom out about the world that we live in today. And then, you know, even things like, you know, only about half of them believing they could actually go and pursue higher education, that they could, you know, afford it. You know, almost half of them being worried about gun violence at their school, them being young but still worried about having enough money to be able to make it in the future. I think these are things that you know, kids are having to bear this burden of, right? Things like school shootings was not something I had to worry about when I was going to school, right? So I think it just speaks to society as a whole that we're at. And I bring up these stories again to kind of just like open our eyes a bit to the world. And if you have kids or, you know, you have planning on having kids or you're a part of Gen Z or nieces, nephews, whatever it might be, I think it's important to sort of just be able to acknowledge like what they might be going through, right? I think my growing up, my upbringing, if I was upset about something, my father's response was, you have nothing to be upset about. You should have seen what it was like for me as a kid, right? And that's so incredibly invalidating, you know, and it's as if I'm not allowed to have emotions or my emotions don't mean anything, right? And then, of course, that leads to bigger and bigger things into adulthood of feeling like people don't hold space for you or that your feelings don't matter and that you're scared then to take up space and you're scared to use your voice because somebody's going to shoot you down as it not being valid or your opinion not meaning something, right, based upon them. And, you know, I think those are sort of things that I hope begin to change just based on conversations like this one, in recognizing that regardless if somebody has had a harder life than you by your standards, it doesn't mean that they are without trauma, that they can't suffer from things like depression or anxiety or have concerns of their own in their life that while it may not seem that drastic to you, feels very real to them, and it is very real to them, and it affects the way that they live their life day to day. So I bring up things like this just to begin to open our eyes a little bit, because I think, again, our community has traditionally had a very closed mindset when it comes to mental health, and dealing with those issues, you know, and us sort of viewing the idea of mental health or depression as like this privilege, right? Like, oh, you should be so lucky to have something to complain about, right? You know, so again, just trying to bring these conversations to light. Mental health is always something I'm going to advocate for that I think is incredibly important. Now, moving on to something that affects my mental health on a regular basis, Donald Trump. And I just found this to be interesting. I'm not like going to be one of these people who's like, oh my God, this is going to be the thing, right? They're gonna get him from running for office. Like, I don't believe in any of these sort of wild goose chases. I just think it's an interesting sort of concept. And again, if we're looking at the world or the society, our country as a whole, and zooming out, the fact that we're even like having these discussions just shows you sort of how far off track we've gotten, right? So there's some lawsuits going on right now. We're learning if Trump could be banned from office. There's a lawsuit in Colorado as well as in Minnesota, both brought by registered voters who argue that Trump is disqualified following the January 6th insurrection. Now, the state courts in these cases will have to answer the question of whether the 14th Amendment's disqualification clause keeps Trump off the ballot. Now, Section 3 of that amendment bars anyone from office who took an oath to support the Constitution of the United States, but then has, quote, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. of. Now, Trump tried to have this moved from state court to federal court. That was denied by the judge. So this will happen. That was a Colorado case. This will happen in states of Colorado and Minnesota. Now, from what I've seen with people talking about it, even if they sort of rule in favor of him not being able to run, eventually this is probably going to get to the Supreme Court in some sort of way, right? Now, this isn't to roast Donald Trump or to bring up things. I mean, I know on the other side of things, Joe Biden has some shady things that people are bringing up when it comes to conversations he had with his son's associates or potential business partners, where apparently his son Hunter would hand the phone over to Joe Biden. He would just say hello to these people, exchange pleasantries, and move on with his day. But they're saying that this, was actually done purposely by Joe Biden to talk about business dealings with people and use his power and stature to leverage business dealings for his son. And the Republicans are doing their little inquiries into possible impeachment type of thing. It doesn't seem like much, but I want to bring it up just to be fair. Anyway, so when we're talking about these cases in Colorado and Minnesota, I think to me, again, it's just like Kiki Andersen, when I had her on the show, said something that has stuck with me, and I've heard it before, but for whatever reason, it just really stuck with me this time around. And she said, the experiment that was America has failed. And again, I've heard this before, but for whatever reason, it really kind of profoundly has just stuck out to me in this particular moment as we kind of look around. And it's like the ideas and fundamentals of everything that we stand upon as a country are sort of, it seems like it just doesn't exist if it doesn't fit into your personal opinion, right? That's where we are as a country, is that your opinion supersedes the very fundamentals that this country was founded upon, right? You are a religious person, you have beliefs attached to it, therefore that supersedes even what's written in the Constitution by our founding fathers, right? We pick and choose what parts of the Constitution or what parts of democracy or what parts of America's sort of reputation or what it's supposed to symbolize. We pick and choose the parts of it that fit into our narrative and then happily turn our back on the rest of it, right? And we're getting to this place, and that's why it's become so divisive and so polarizing, where people, again, are just incredibly selfish with just doing what they believe, with their own personal opinion, rather than what's best for the country itself, right? And it's also like this narcissistic view of we actually can't coexist if we have different beliefs anymore, right? It's like I have my set of beliefs, and anybody who doesn't believe in that is just flat out wrong, and we can't coexist together. And then I believe we should make laws that back up my set of beliefs because they are superior to yours, right? When literally the foundation of this country is things like freedom of religion, right? Freedom of speech, which was literally created as a means for people to criticize their government and not, be hung like we've seen, like what happened historically, when people, came out and criticized the powers that be, right? That's what this country is founded upon. But in 2023, you critique the government, you're anti-patriotic, you're anti-American, you should go somewhere else, right? And literally, the country was founded upon the idea that we have the freedom of speech to critique the government if we are not happy with what they are doing, right? And your religious beliefs are valid, they have merit, but they don't also then need to be pushed upon every other person that lives in this country. That's why we have things like freedom of religion. That's why we have, laws in place via the Constitution that say in public schools, you can't bring a religion into it. You can't make one religion the dominant religion in a public school setting, right? It's because it's the idea that people with different belief systems are supposed to be able to coexist together and respect one another, right? It's not saying that mine is superior to yours. Therefore, all of you who do not believe the same thing need to bow down to me and my thoughts and my ideas, right? That's actually anti-American. But in 2023, that's just become the norm, which is really sad to see. And I don't even know how I got off on that sort of tangent, that train of thought. I was just thinking about a recent Instagram back and forth that I was having with somebody because I took the temptation and I immediately regret it because I realized that you're never going to talk sense to people. They're just going to keep coming back with nonsense. But I think all of this is just a reflection of where we are as a country, and then the fact that this person, there's a serious question about whether or not he's eligible for running for office because of something like a potential a potential insurrection that he was a part of. But not even potential, it happened, right? And he's still like neck and neck in the polls and is the perceived favorite for the Republican Party. That's like, it's crazy that that's the world that we exist in today. But hey, here we are, right? Now, last thing I wanted to talk about here today was UFOs. I've been obsessed with this, and now I'm going to actually reach out to this person. I think I found somebody. So you have a UFO expert presenting alleged alien corpses to Mexico's Congress, right? So journalist and UFOologist Jamie Maussan took to Congress in Mexico City to present 2 glass boxes that housed alleged, quote, non-human alien corpses. Now, according to him, he says, quote, these specimens are not part of our terrestrial evolution, the UFO enthusiast told Mexican politicians. These aren't beings that were found after a UFO wreckage. They were found in a diatom mines and were later fossilized. So they were found in diatom mines. Okay. I don't know if you've seen the pictures for this. I'm gonna before I give my opinion, I'm gonna read a couple more things on what this man said. The pictures look kind of wild. I don't know if you've seen the memes on the internet. Anyway, continuing. Whether they are aliens or not, we don't know, but they were intelligent and they live with us, he added. The journalist said that the Autonomous National University of Mexico conducted research on the 2 bodies. The researchers' findings allegedly showed that the specimens are 1,000-year old. As per the journalist's description, the 2 specimens were found in Cusco, Peru, and they were allegedly deep in Cusco's mines, fossilized with diatomaceous earth. Did I say that? Diatomaceous earth. I believe I pronounced that correctly. I apologize. I'm not a scientist. Interestingly, Massan said there is factual evidence that these 2 bodies are non-human remains. He explained that Mexican researchers used radiocarbon dating to find that 30% of the specimen's DNA is, quote, unknown. He said that X-rays show that one specimen has, quote, eggs inside. Both have traces of osmium, which is a rare metal. All right, now, you got to see the pictures for this. I'm going to include the link to this in the show notes if you haven't seen it yet. I'm all about this alien shit. I just want to let you know that. I believe it. I think it's a real thing. I think we're going to get real confirmation. There was that other hearing that happened in front of Congress here in the States. But these aliens look a little suspect. They literally look like the Hollywood UFOs, like tiny. They almost like the Men in Black aliens, which brings, a lot of doubt into question when we're talking about this idea of aliens. But at this point, man, like there's so much stuff getting declassified and we're seeing the videos. And it's interesting to me. It's just like, it's funny the place that we're at in life. And like, obviously, I think if this is in fact real, and not necessarily these weirdo looking aliens that look just like ET, but like if the idea of extraterrestrials and like us having real knowledge and finding them and all types of things like that is real, which I think it is, the fact that we are not like freaking the fuck out as human beings is wild to me, but also it's just kind of like maybe we're just at that point in society where this idea has become so normalized and we're just literally have so much other shit to worry about that the idea of aliens being here is like the least of our concerns. And yeah, I just find this to be fascinating. I'm gonna get this guy on the show. Actually, I'm gonna literally Google this dude right now while we're here on the show, just so I can remind myself, because we were looking at another. I'm just laughing because the wormhole that you end up going down. I just want to let you know, and shout out to Brenda who's helping me research this. The wormhole that you end up going down when you are looking for quote unquote alien experts, it takes you to some weird places on the internet. And one of the people that we saw that we had found, and we're trying to like keep like, oh, maybe there's some like Latin people who are like researching this shit. We found a woman, and it was like, all right, this seems interesting. And then you just start going deeper and deeper into their posts, and like the crazy just begins to show itself a little bit more and a little bit more. And it's just like, man, all right, this is not somebody I'm going to unleash onto my podcast listeners and potentially go down a really weird wormhole of conspiracy theories and just oddities, if you will. But this dude, seems pretty legit. So I'm going to try to reach out to him. I found him right here. He's a 70-year-old Mexican journalist and TV personality and UFOologist. So we're gonna talk to him. I'm gonna reach out to him. I gotta find this dude's contact information. Jamie Maussan. If anybody knows him, feel free to let me know, and we'll connect this. I want to get a UFO expert on here. I just think it's so fascinating. As suspect as his UFO corpses look, this is interesting to me. And I think aliens are real, y'all. I don't know. I feel like the universe is so gigantic, and like there's multiple galaxies and shit that we're not even aware of. Like the idea that we're alone in all of this, it doesn't add up at the end of the day. So verdict is still out on these UFO corpses that this guy has allegedly. We will I'll post the show notes. I'll leave a link to it. There's pictures of it as they rest peacefully in their glass boxes, and I'll let you kind of make a decision if you think it's real or not. Now, with that said, we talked about the nonsense, the BS from this last week. Let's get into some positivity from our community. We'll do it in our Mi Gente segment. Mi Gente. All right, so this last week was the VMAs. This week, actually. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I didn't watch it. The VMAs have been pretty trash in recent memories. I will say I kind of regret it because I was watching some of like the clips on TikTok and things like that as they pop up. And they had people from my generation performing. You had Diddy doing a little tidbit of things. NSYNC performed with Justin. And then, bigger than all of that, like the Latin representation at the VMAs was just out there. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing to see it. I definitely immediately regretted it once I started seeing the clips come up of not watching it, because there was so much going on from our community and we were being honored in such a beautiful way. And again, I think it just speaks to where we've come as a culture and the value that's being seen in our art and our voices. I just feel proud to see it, right? So you had Shakira, who won the Video Vanguard Award, right? And that was previously held by people like Michael Jackson, Rihanna, Beyonce, Madonna, and Jennifer Lopez, who was up until now the only Latina to win that award. Shakira then gave a dope performance, kind of a medley of some of her biggest songs. You had Karol G performing, man, Karol G is crushing it right now. She is, I hate even saying things like this because it's like, why can't she just be the next Bad Bunny? But she's like a female version of Bad Bunny. But to me, it's that same sort of crossover potential that somebody like Bad Bunny. Karol G is a superstar. When I'm DJing in the clubs, it's like the big records, current records, or just current artists that you find yourself playing multiple records from and people loving it, is obviously Bad Bunny. And then Karol G is like right there with him. I've been noticing recently. So shout out to her. She's been just crushing it, having an amazing year. And then she actually won an award for best collaboration with Shakira for the song TQM. And I can only imagine, I feel like I've touched on this before, but I can only imagine how dope that is, right? It's like two different generations of artists from Colombia up there, and you collab together, right? You let go of the egos that hold so many people back. You collab together, and then there you are accepting this award. And I'm sure for someone like Karol G, who probably looked up to Shakira, it's got to be pretty surreal to not only be on a song with her, but then accepting this award after probably watching her on the VMAs when she was a little kid, right? So just amazing, amazing stuff. I love seeing these kind of things. And maybe like the music nerd inside of me looks at all this shit a bit too deeply, but I just think it's a really beautiful moment. Anita performed as well. She did a really dope sort of tribute to Brazil. Then you had Cardi performing alongside Megan Thee Stallion. Ice Spice, who is half Dominican, I believe. She won Best New Artist. So, man, beautiful to see this representation. Oh, and Peso Pluma also performed, which to me was probably the biggest deal, right? Because obviously Peso Pluma is big in the Latin world, but, I don't think there's a lot of people yet in the English market who are too keen to his music. Maybe you've seen his name, maybe you've seen him around, but, I know, again, as a DJ, I've tried to play certain records, and it's like hit or miss, and generally it's miss when playing a Peso Pluma song, just because people don't have the familiarity with that, I feel like, on a wider scale. So for MTV to put him on the main show, I thought was beautiful, and he's, bringing more traditional Mexican music into the mainstream. I just think it's a really dope kind of thing to see. And I think like that, to me, like someone like Peso Pluma, as big as he is, right, and he's that guy and he's crushing it, I think for a commercial crossover, sort of, not even crossover, it's just commercial platform like the Video Music Awards, to have somebody like that playing the main show, not like the opening show or whatever it is, but playing on the main show, I think is really, really dope. And I think MTV got it right this year. I think they've been slacking a bit over the last few years. I mean, it's still the VMAs, but just hasn't felt like the event that we all have been, grew up remembering. And I feel like for this one, it felt like there was a lot more discussion happening around it. And, I hate to toot our own horn over here, but, that's what happens when you bring the Latinos into the mix, man. We're here. We're a very real force, a very real voice. You know what I'm saying? You want to get some recognition. You want to get them numbers up. You want to get people talking about you. You got to invite us as a part of the conversation, man. We got that social currency right now going heavy. So a little message out there. Hopefully this begins to further open people's eyes and these brands, these companies, and these organizations that we have a tremendous amount of value, and y'all need to start giving us a seat at the table. So love to see that. Now, with that said, let's tie everything we talked about today in a neat little bow in a segment we call Conclusion Stew.
Time for Conclusion Stew.
All right, so quickly kind of touching on everything we talked about today. We started with this conversation around Gen Z struggling more with mental health than millennials. And I think the irony in that conversation is mental health is a normalized conversation these days, which also could mean more people are speaking about their issues. But also the fact that there are now more options for this generation to get treatment than there were for my generation, right? You're talking about things like BetterHelp, which is like just an app that literally it's relatively cheap in comparison to normal traditional therapy. And you just meet up virtually with somebody. It's very, very simple to do. And those options are available to this generation, yet they're still struggling a bit more with mental health. And I think, again, it's probably a commentary on the world that we live in today. I think our country as a whole is incredibly heavy. It's polarized. And I think technology only divides us further. It only disconnects us even more. And I think that's inevitably going to have some sort of effect on people's mental health, particularly a generation who basically grew up without knowing anything other than that, right? To them, technology has always been something that's been a part of their lives. They've grown up with it in their hands. For the most part, it's been a part of their social interactions for forever at this point, right? The entirety of their lives. And I think we're going to begin to start seeing more and more of these sort of detrimental effects that things like social media and this just hyper connection that we have via the internet, we're going to probably start seeing a bit more of those effects on this younger generation. And sort of their I don't know if it's their inability to kind of separate the two worlds or just the way it maybe hinders their social life, the way they interact with the world itself. I don't know exactly what it is. I actually should bring somebody on and talk about that a bit. But someone like Cal Newport has written the book on digital minimalism and talking about these things, right? And I think now we're going to start seeing these numbers come up of people dealing with mental health issues in this generation, as in particular Gen Z. I think it's no surprise why they're struggling a bit more than my generation did. So good information to know, and stuff. If you're a parent, like we talked about earlier, we're just trying to speak to anybody younger and correct mistakes from the past, like having space for anybody who is struggling with mental health, and giving them a safe space to talk about it and to work through it. I think is the moral of the entire story at the end of the day. Now, this lawsuit with Trump in Colorado and Minnesota questioning his ability to actually run for president because of the January 6th insurrection and his association with it. It's an interesting conversation. I'm not excited about it. I'm not one of these pundits talking and they're all just laughing and loving every moment of this. I think it's like anything else. It's a dark day for our country. The fact that we're even having these questions, the fact that the court system is being tied up with these issues. It's a sad thing for our country. The fact that this is where we are right now and the polarization continues to happen, the closed-mindedness, the narcissism in the belief that your views are superior to everybody else's and they should just follow what you do. All of that is just it's a scary time period to be living in, and I think this is just a commentary on that as well. And then these UFOs, man, I believe it. We're gonna try to get Jamie Massoud on the show here. I don't know if I believe his aliens per se. I don't know if those aliens are the ones that I want to be leading with. But I do believe in aliens. I think there's something out there. I want to hear what this man has to say. That we gotta reach out to him. Somebody's gonna find him. We're gonna track this guy down to get him on the show. And then, man, the VMAs, just love to see a Latin representation from Shakira to Karol G to Peso Pluma to Anita to Cardi B to Ice Spice. I just think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Again, like bringing up Peso Pluma performing on that stage, I think is gigantic because he's not a part of that mainstream conversation just yet. And for him to be elevated to that, I think just shows the sort of social cachet, if you will, that we have as Latinos in this country, in this world, and sort of like these bigger companies and brands knowing that if they want to be a part of the bigger conversation, that means including us in whatever they're doing, right? And I think that's just an incredible, incredible thing to see. Now, with that said, again, justbe.nyc if you want to join the new social club. The links are live. That's, our one-on-ones. It's going to be a 3-month program where we really break down the 4 pillars of conscious living. I'm so fucking excited about it. And then it also makes you a part of the group chats that we do as well, the group meetings that we do, the mastermind groups that we meet up with. You'll be a part of that. So all amazing and beautiful and incredible, incredible stuff. Justbe.nyc. I'm so excited to launch this. Click the social club tab. You'll be able to find all that information on there. You could book a free one-on-one with myself and my business partner, and from there we'll talk about if this is a good fit for you. But it's live now, y'all. Go check it out. The 4 pillars of conscious living. Justbe.nyc. Now, with that said, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Tuesday, we are bringing you a very special episode to kick off Latin History Month. We're going to be teaching you Latin history you did not know, featuring some of my favorite creators. So we'll do that on Tuesday. Till then, have an amazing weekend. Stay safe. We'll talk soon. Peace.